What's up, y'all? I'm back at it again at Koski of Fun Day. I usually drop a video every day or such and such, but got the people on my back, so guess that means I'm kind of blowing up. Anywho, excuse me, we're back at it once again. And this video comes from How Africa, the Rise of Africa. And it talks about how they getting down on our people over there in Africa. You know what I'm saying? Scandal, according to a German newspaper, Africa pays approximately 400 billion euros annually to France, right? Because colonialization never ended. And this for all them cats that's talking about Macron this and Macron that. I'm glad right now Paris is burning. And it should keep on burning. But we're going to get into this video, you know what I'm saying, speak on this right quick. As I said before, scandal, according to a German newspaper, Africa pays approximately 400 billion euros annually to France. You see the guy all around here. This is economic slavery. It's important for the development of the French economy. Whenever this traffic is likely to fail, France is ready for anything to reconquer it. If a leader of the CFA zone no longer meets the requirements of France, Paris is blocking its foreign exchange reserves and more. France closes its bank in this country considered rebel. This was the case of the Ivory Coast of Laurent Gbagbo, who's right now, Laurent Gbagbo, if you look him up, right now he's at The Hague. He's going through trial. You know what I'm saying? That's how they do these cats. A German newspaper accused France of looting 440 billion euros each year to Africans through the CFA franc. The French government collects from its foreign colonies each year 440 billion euros of taxes. France relied on the revenue coming from Africa not to sink in its economic insignificance, warned the former president Jean Chirac. In the 1950s and 60s, France decided that the French colonies of Africa to become independent. Although Paris government accepted the formal Declaration of Independence, it called on African countries to sign a so-called Pact of Continuation of Colonization. They agreed to introduce French colonial currency, FCFA, franc for the French colonies of Africa, to maintain French schools, military system, and establish French as an official language. The CFA franc is a domination of a current currency of 14 African countries, members of the franc zone. This currency, which constitutes a break from the emergence of these countries, was created in 1945 when France ratified the Bretton Woods agreements to proceed to implement its first declaration of the patrie of the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. This is called the franc of the French colonies of Africa. Under this law, 14 African countries still obligated to store about 85% of their foreign exchange reserves at the Banque de France in Paris. They are under direct control of the French treasury. The country concerns do not have access to this part of their reserves, as the 15% of the reserves are insufficient for their needs. They must borrow additional funds from the French treasury at market prices. Since 1961, Paris controlled all the exchange reserves in Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, the Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Ecuador, Guinea, and Gabon. In addition, these countries must transfer their colonial debt for infrastructure built by France to Paris, as Silicon Africa 3 reported in detail. France takes 440 billion euros a year. The government in Paris also has a right to first refusal on all newly discovered natural resources in African countries. Finally, French companies must have priority in awarding contracts to the former colonies. As a result, there is most of the assets in the field of supply, finance, transport, energy, agriculture, in the hands of French companies. The ruling elite in each African country must fill these compulsory claims without or any other choices. African leaders who refuse are threatened with assassination or overthrow of their governments, a la Thomas Sankara. In the past 50 years, there have been 67 coups d'etats in 26 African countries. 16 of these 26 were former colonies of France. The example of this is the first president of Togo, West Africa, Selenius Alopio, overthrown by a coup. He refused to sign a pact for constitutional settlement, but France insists that Togo to pay compensation for the infrastructure that has been built by the French during the colonial period. The sum equivalent was 40% of the households in Togo in 1963, required fairly an independent country to reach its economic limits quickly. In addition, the new president of Togo decided to remove and print his own national currency, the French colonial currency FCFA. 3 days after this decision, the new government was overthrown by a group of former foreign legionnaires and the president was killed. The head of the legionnaires, Gassi Anamandan, received 550 euros from the French embassy for the attack, according to the British Telegraphs. 4 years later, Amadana was promoted with the support of Paris and the new president of Togo. He established a tyrannical dictatorship in West African country and remained in power until his death in 2005. In the years following, the Paris government kept the link with its former legionnaires to overthrow unpopular governments in its former colonies. This was the case with the first president of the Central African Republic, David Dacko, overthrown by former members of the Foreign Legion in 1966. The same thing happened to the president of Burkina Faso, Maurice Yamago, and the president of Benin, Matthew Kazim, the author of the coup d'etat. This was the case of the first president of the Republic of Mali, Mona Keita, who was also the victim of a coup by the former legionnaires in 1968. The reason, a few years earlier, it simply decided to part with the French colonial currency. As proof of this accusation by the German newspaper, South African leader, EFF leader, Julius Malema, earlier this year also attested to the fact that up to now, the French nation is still getting taxed from African states and that everyone must accept that. Bloomberg also reported a hoard of cash that sits in the Bank of France, $20 billion in African money held in a trust by the French government, earning 0.75% interest. Now, economists and politicians from the 14 Central and West African countries say they want their funds returned, an arrangement dating back to the days of French colonial empire ended. France holds the money to guarantee that the CFA franc, the currency used by the 14 nations, will stay convertible into euros at a fixed exchange rate of 655.957. The compulsory deposit started more than a half a century ago when the then colonies had to place their financial reserves in the French treasury. The deposit requirement has dropped over the decades. Today, the African members entrust 50% of their reserves to Paris. Here's a note of African nations being forced to pay tax to France. Here's one of the notes look like. It shows a black person on there, but the money, even though it shows a black face, the money still goes to France. It's still French money. France's colonial tax still enforced in Africa, bleeding Africa and freeing France. When Guinea demanded independence from the French colonial rule in 1958, the French allayed the fear of more than 3,000 leaving the country and taking their entire property. In addition, they destroyed anything that could not be taken. They destroyed schools, nurseries, public administration buildings, cars, books, medicine, research institute instruments. Tractors were crushed and sabotaged, animals killed, and food in the warehouse was burned or poisoned. Scandalous bastards. In effect, they were sending a message to all the other colonies, and the consequence of rejecting France will be high. Colonialism is an enduring stain on African history, and the economic oppression continues to exist. An article of Manuel Marquez Cantong, peace activist and editor of SiliconAfrica.com, addressed this practice. The article called attention to the ongoing practice by which the former African countries are forced to pay a colonial tax to France even today. In fact, France continues to thrive on the practice, which approximately 500 billion euros from the African countries each year. After France destroyed Guinea, who sought independence, the alternative was to pay a tax. No African country could estimate the effect this had on the 14 different countries. As Katoon notes, this outrageous tax deprives African economies of much-needed funds, exacerbates debt, and stripes their authority of their own natural resources. But the determinants are more than just economics, as the ill of colonialism manifests in social ways that is observed as equally devastating to the dignity and the identity of African people. Salinas Olympio, the first president of the Republic of Togo, instead of signing the continuation pact with de Gaulle, instead agreed to pay an annual debt to France for the so-called benefits of French colonization. This prevented the French not destroying the country before they left, however. The amount estimated by France was so big that reimbursement of the so-called colonial debt was close to 40% of the country's budget in 1963. Olympio's dream was to build an independent, self-sufficient, self-reliant country, but the French had him killed by a sergeant who was given $612 bounty by the French embassy. Sell out, motherfucker. History has shown that despite the years of African fighting to liberate themselves, France had repeatedly used ex-foreign legionnaires to carry out coups against elected presidents. This includes Jean Bedel Bosson, who assassinated David Dacko, the first president of the Central African Republic. In the last 50 years, a total of 67 coups have occurred in 26 African countries, of which 16 are ex-French colonies. This indicates France is desperate to hold on to whatever land it has in Africa. In March 2008, former French President Jacques Chirac said, without Africa, France would slide into the ranks of a third world power, and that Franc predecessor Frantz Fanon has already prophesied in 1957, without Africa, France will have no history in the 21st century. So there you have it. Even though they talk about Thomas Sankara, you know what I'm saying, but this practice still continues on and on and on today. You know what I'm saying? So this is what the French is doing in Africa. So I don't want to see no Spike Lee going over there talking about President Trump when the French government as a whole is destroying your people worldwide. You know what I'm saying? Shame on cats like that. We have no friends. Until black people understand we have no friends, you ain't no need for you to run to France, run to England, run to China, run to Russia. These cats don't like us like that. They have no love for us. Anyway, hey, this is, shout out to Thomas Sankara, you know what I'm saying? Bruno Foster, shout out to all these fallen martyrs of African history. You know what I'm saying? We're going to do some videos on these cats because they deserve to have their story talked about and heard about from the American, from our point of view. You know what I'm saying? Hey, this is Tyler Koski of Fun Day. Much love to you and yours. Peace.